You're gambling with World War III.
Это нарушает нашу безопасность, расширение НАТО.
As a military strategic planner, a former planner, you don't want politicians telegraphing what your next moves are going to be.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too.
A peacekeeping force does not exist with a ceasefire.
Now, President Trump has announced that the United States will impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from India starting on August the 1st. He also said the world's fifth largest economy will face an unspecified penalty for continuing to trade with Russia on military capability. It comes as Mr. Trump's shortened deadline for Russia to come to the table on a ceasefire in Ukraine inches closer. With me to discuss, as ever, is our resident analyst, Mikey Kay, former assault helicopter pilot and senior officer in the British military. Good to see you again, Mikey.
You too.
So lots of talk now on secondary sanctions. We hear Donald Trump talking about this week. How does that affect President Putin's ability to target Ukraine if these secondary sanctions do indeed come in?
Yeah, lots to get through tonight. So let's start by taking a look at Trump's announcement on bringing the deadline on secondary sanctions and tariffs forward against Russia. Here he is speaking in the UK earlier this week. Let's take a look at what he said.
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
Yeah, in terms of a response by Russia, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia is quote-unquote immune from the impact based on previous sanctions. But interestingly, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, a close ally of Putin, responded on Twitter. Let's have a look on slide. Medvedev wrote, "Each new ultimatum, quote, is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with Trump's own country." So, Geeta, from a military perspective, Trump's Truth Social post today is a good example of how the US is trying to use secondary sanctions as a threat. Let's go slide and have a look at what he said. I won't read it ad verbatim, but basically Trump is going after India on its purchase of energy from Russia. That's around just over 2 million barrels a day, for which Russia is using that funding towards its war in Ukraine. 25% tariff indicated by Russia on that post. And then he also mentions India's purchase of military equipment from Russia. And there's a penalty that he says, but there's no idea of what that penalty actually is. The Indian government have responded today saying that the two countries have been engaged in negotiations on concluding a fair, balanced and mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement over the last few months. We remain committed to that objective. So while Trump has said what his potential intent is, there's this sort of indication that there's still some wiggle room from India to actually sort something out. Now, what's interesting is the Truth Social post by Trump goes after India and its Russian military capability equipment purchases. But the counter to that is that India could then pivot away from the US on the purchasing of military capability. So, for example, India's fast jet fleet comprises of around 70% Russian-made jets. I'll give you an indication of what they got. Let's go slide, please. So this is the Indian Air Force Russian-made Sukhoi 30. It entered service with India in 2002. It's its latest purchase, but it's still quite old, 23 years. Then, if we go slide, this is the Indian Air Force Russian-made MiG-29. Now, this has been upgraded with a life extension that could see it in service with the Indian Air Force into the 2030s.
And important to point out, just historically, India has had a very long-running and established relationship with Russia, partly as a juxtaposition to being under too much US pressure. The US had historically supported India's arch nemesis in a way, Pakistan, who it sees as a security threat. But also just to bring in the whole question of oil imports from Russia, because the Indian High Commissioner to the UK, speaking last week in an interview to Times Radio, said many of India's European partners are continuing to buy rare earth and other energy products from the same countries that they are, quote, refusing to let us buy from. And he said, don't you think that seems a little bit odd? So there are these, other political factors, aren't there? In terms of where we are now, to what degree does the Indian Air Force have US-made fast jet aircraft right now?
So it doesn't. It does have US-made transport aircraft. It's got the Hercules, for example, and the Globemaster, the C-17. It does have helicopters, but it doesn't have fast jets. But this is sort of where Trump has to tread a very careful path. He will be well aware of the current deliberations by India in their aspiration to procure a fifth-generation fighter. Basically, it has the stealth technology involved. And there are two contenders for that. Let's go slide and have a look. So this is taken at the India Air Show in February this year. On the left of shot, that is the Russian-made Sukhoi 57. Its NATO codename is the Felon, Russia's fifth-generation fighter. On the right of the shot, so they were both at the same air show, you've got the US-made F-35, both vying for India to buy them. Now, what would India get with the Sukhoi 57? It would get full autonomy of the Sukhoi 57. So what that means is it includes not just assembly in India, so Russia would make the parts and it'd be assembled in India, but also transfer of technology and something called source codes. Basically, source codes would give India the ability to change the software inside the jet. And integrate its own radars, avionics and weapon systems. Now, when it comes to the F-35, in terms of some of its capability, the F-35 is more advanced, so better stealth technology, for example. And this allows the F-35 to get closer to targets avoiding radar.
Yeah, and again, in terms of where we are now, it's a move that is being questioned from the US, isn't it, within India, in that it's seen that really Trump has been very focused on countering China, and therefore to target India like this in security terms and military terms is puzzling to some. But sanctions is what's being discussed now, whether we're going to see these secondary sanctions and how effective current sanctions are. Where else can the US and Europe target Russia further on sanctions?
I mean, if you look at a pure kinetic capability, what I mean by kinetic is the ability for Russia to launch advanced weapons capability on Ukraine. The massive problem, it's almost like the elephant in the room, is foreign components being used in Russian military capability that Zelensky has actually highlighted the issue. I mean, it's been ongoing for some time now, but Zelensky highlighted the issue at the NATO summit last month. Let's take a look at what Zelensky said.
Please make sure your countries and your companies are not helping Russia or its bodies in any way. This is crucial, really. And there is no significant Russian weapon today that is produced without components, without equipment or materials from other countries, sadly, including some from Europe and NATO. Yes, of course. And this must stop. Such components can be found in every Russian missile, in most of their drones, and in military vehicles. And it's not just China. Also, Taiwan and some of these parts come from the European countries and from the United States, and every single component or machine tool delivered to Russia's defense sector helps prolong the war and is a crime against peace. Every scheme that helps them build Shahed drones or any other tools of killing is not just aiding a war against us, it's a threat to you.
So what capability is Zelensky referring to there?
Basically, foreign components. They're pervasive across a lot of Russian weapons. In fact, according to the Organised Crime and Corruption Project, that's the same organisation that blew the top of the Panama Papers, so very credible. Customs data found that from 2022 to January 2024, more than 200,000 shipments of restricted microelectronics entered Russia. Among the most frequently found components in Russian weapons are microprocessors, and they are produced by American companies. Let's go slide and I'll give you a look at what we're looking at. So this is the Russian KH-101 cruise missile. It's basically dropped from a Russian strategic bomber. We saw that attack by Ukraine on strategic Russian bombers well out in the east. They're the type of aircraft that carry this cruise missile. Let's go slide. This is the Kinzhal hypersonic missile. It's fairly old now, but it's got a speed of Mach 4+. That's 4 times the speed of sound. And then you have the Shahed 136 drone. Now, why these are important is in June alone, Russia launched over 5,400 of these drones on Ukraine. So absolutely vital that these components are targeted. Now, these are the type of capability, there's more, but these are sort of the headlines in terms of the capability. Now, the US companies that are providing these components have publicly come out and opposed their products being used for military purposes, especially by Russia, but have struggled to supply or fully control their supply chains in terms of sanctions and the loopholes, which are absolutely widespread. Many Russia's importers, the way they're doing it is they continue importing Western parts through shell companies or intermediaries.
And so that is US companies. What about other countries?
Well, worryingly, for me, Russia's latest hypersonic missile, it's called the Oreshnik, that also contains foreign components. And I'll just show you a bit of video footage here. This is the Oreshnik, people say, or test fired on Dnipro last year, which is in Ukraine. And what's absolutely deadly about this is it's got a speed of about Mach 10, which is 10 times the speed of sound. What's deadly about this is that it can carry nuclear or conventional warheads. It can carry 6 warheads, with each warhead having 6 submunitions. So that's 36 off one missile going at 10 times the speed of sound. And according to the Financial Times, this also requires foreign parts or has foreign parts for manufacture. I mean, the reliance, Geeta, is particularly pronounced in the field of what's called computer numerical control, CNC. This technology allows factories to rapidly shape materials at high precision by using computers to control the tools. Now, there's a Japanese company involved in that, and there's 2 German companies involved in that, and they make the systems for this technology.